Welcome back to the AAA MF YouTube channel. Today we're presenting three very special cars. Three V8 mid-engined supercars from Ferrari. The 360 Challenge Stradale, the 430 Scuderia and the 458 Speciale. All three of these cars were designed for car enthusiasts who wanted more of a track feel to their car. They've used the same principles with all three cars, less weight and more power. But let's see how they all compare and let's see what makes each one special. The 360 Challenge Stradale is probably the most track-focused car in terms of the history that brought it into existence. Ferrari had the 360 Challenge series and they had a race car prepared and then they tuned that to become a road car. The other two cars that we're testing today were actually road-going cars that were then tuned to be track-focused cars. So the 360 Challenge Stradale really has its origins in racing. The inside is stripped out, there's no soundproofing, the floor is metal, and you have these beautiful carbon fiber door panels and carbon fiber racing seats. What's really nice about the Challenge Stradale is it has modern technology in the brakes. It has carbon ceramic brakes, which were actually carried over from the Enzo and would later be fitted to the 430. The power is relatively low compared to today's standards at 420 brake horsepower. However, you never really feel like you need more power in this car. Once it gets warmed up, the car feels exhilarating to drive, and what makes it really exhilarating is the sound from that beautiful V8 3.6 litre engine. Ferrari really got it right with this car in terms of the sound. The noise going through the tunnels is out of this world. The steering is magnificent in the 360 Challenge Stradale. It's as you would expect from a track-focused car. It's very direct and it's very light at the same time. It almost feels like a go-kart to drive. The one drawback, obviously, with the 360 Challenge Stradale is the technology of the gearbox is pretty old. At the same time, it does feel actually quite involving having the single clutch because it's almost like changing with a manual gearbox. The 430 Scuderia that we're driving today was actually purchased in Germany, and it's got a huge amount of extras on it, including a lovely Capristo exhaust, which really sounds very loud from the outside. However, when you're in the car, it doesn't sound as loud as the 360 Challenge Stradale, which is interesting. I think that's probably because the car has a lot more soundproofing. The 430 Scuderia is light years ahead of the Challenge Stradale in terms of the suspension setup. A large part of this was due to Michael Schumacher, who was racing for Ferrari at the time and had a lot of input into the development of the 430 Scuderia. You have the Manettino on the steering wheel, and you can actually adjust the suspension and the throttle settings for track use. The car feels a lot heavier, it feels actually quite a lot bigger, and it sits better on the road. We've gone up from 420 brake horsepower in the Stradale, now up to 503 brake horsepower in the 430 Scuderia. So a big increase, and you really feel that through the gears, and a huge amount of torque in the 430. When you put your foot down, you really are flying. The 458 Speciale is the first Ferrari that has the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox. These gearboxes are very popular now and have brought supercars to a whole new segment of the market. People that in the past wouldn't want to have a manual gearbox or wouldn't want to use a manual gearbox on a daily basis. And this dual clutch gearbox really does offer people that want a more involving driving experience the ability to own a car that they can use every single day. The drawback for me is that the 458 Speciale doesn't feel special enough and doesn't compare to anywhere near the feeling of the 360 Challenge Stradale in terms of just the amount of occasion you get just from sitting in the car and the noise from the engine, even though now we're up to 597 brake horsepower, which is a huge jump over the original 360 Challenge Stradale. Obviously the weight is up as well on the 458 Speciale. You're talking about 1,395 kilograms, so 115 kilograms more than the Challenge Stradale. So obviously a lot more safety has gone into the cars as they've got newer, and probably more regulations as well have made the cars slightly heavier, and a lot of people now demand things like electric windows and air conditioning in order to be able to use these cars on a daily basis. So we're back in the Stradale now, and obviously I'm biased because this is my car. So I think it's probably best to get someone else who isn't biased and who doesn't own a Challenge Stradale. So I'm going to let someone else drive.
Yo! Oh, he's locked himself out of his own car.
And the brakes are pretty good for an old car. They're carbon.
Yeah.
They don't squeal like the 458 Speciale. A little bit.
You couldn't have done that much better.
A little bit.
There you see. Yeah, that's one problem with Speciale brakes, generally. Look who's pulled up alongside. Yeah, Speciale brakes. It's interesting to hear that the one that's joined us today also squeaks, because mine used to squeak big time. Why did you opt for no stripe?
Because one of my friends, I asked her what she thought about a few different models, and she saw this with the stripe and said it looks like a pizza stripe.
That's what it does.
And I went for one without the stripe. I thought it was a bit subtle.
Yeah.
Blue, without the stripe, it was quite subtle.
Yeah. Interestingly, we have two special edition Ferraris here, the CS and the Scuderia, both with no stripe. Rare.
So how do they all compare? I would say the 360 Challenge Stradale is the car that you would want to take out on a Sunday afternoon for a nice drive if the weather's great. It has a huge amount of occasion. It has an amazing noise from the engine. It's a little bit agricultural when you first start it up, but once the engine gets warm and you're on the open road, it feels sensational to drive. A huge amount of feedback through the steering, the carbon brakes, and it's just a lovely place to sit with the lovely carbon racing seats. And that feeling of being in a race car is accentuated by the fact that you really have no carpets below you, just the floor. The 430 Scuderia is probably a car you could use on a daily basis because the F1 gearbox is much smoother than on the Challenge Stradale, and you have a lot more torque, and the car feels a lot better to drive on English roads with that lovely Manatino setting so that you can adjust the suspension. The 458 Speciale to me looks special, but it doesn't feel special enough to drive for a sense of occasion. That doesn't mean it's not a great car. I think the 458 Speciale probably is the one here that you would want every day if you only had one car. You can use it every day. It's smooth, it's comfortable, it's fast. Personally, for me, I would prefer to have something very special in the garage, like the Challenge Stradale, and then have a general run around, rather than having the 430 or 458 in my garage. But there's no denying they're all great cars and they all have different qualities about them.